Hello, my name's Ian Tinney. I'm the CEO of 4Data Solutions. We're a data analytics and security company. We work with CISOs and the wider C-suite, organisations that tend to have challenges around doing data analytics, but making sure that it's secure and compliant. I'm joined today by Taffy from Emetic. Hello, Taffy. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. So my name is Taffy Makamure. I'm a senior solutions engineer at Emetic, and Emetic is a cloud-native application protection platform that helps organizations protect their cloud workloads. In terms of myself, Ian, I have been in the business for over 20 years now,
Wow.
and I've worked in numerous capacities as a developer, within operations, as a systems administrator, and also within security as well. Some interesting facts about me is I have been fortunate enough to have worked for two of the hyperscalers. One at AWS, where I helped as a cloud solutions architect for the professional services arm, working with financial services, helping them adopt cloud services in a secure manner, and also for Azure as well. Helping them, or rather helping financial services organizations adopt cloud again in a secure manner.
Yeah.
And it's a pleasure to be on this show.
It sounds like you're the right person to speak to about cloud security then.
I would hope so. Although I will say that cloud security is fast evolving and there is a lot to learn. If there's one thing I've learned, is that I don't know anything and there's plenty more to learn.
Yeah, always is. Yeah, quite right. We wanted to put together some short videos around the subject of cloud security because it is quite a vast subject. And so this being the first one, I wanted to keep it very high level and just sort of introduce some concepts around cloud security and some of the challenges around it. So with that in mind, you mentioned 20 years. I've been in IT now for 33 years. Wow. And if we go back sort of that far, security was sort of antivirus on endpoints and firewalls and router access lists and things to protect the perimeter. And our notion of the perimeter was often we use the analogy of the castle moat to sort of describe it. We had physical data centers which were the castle, and then the perimeter was protected by firewalls and access lists on routers and things. And that was, there was only one way into the organisation through the north-south firewalls. Right. That was like analogous to a drawbridge, portcullis sort of thing. Now, if you fast forward sort of 30 years to sort of where we are now, I hear the phrase IAM is the new perimeter a lot. Could you sort of explain what is meant by that phrase and maybe just sort of talk a little bit about how cloud security differs from traditional security?
I really love that analogy where you talk about
it's not mine. I borrowed it.
But it's such a great visualization of what the security is like. And you are quite right. It was exactly structured in that way in the traditional data center, where the resources that any consumer needed to use, and when I say consumer, I talk about the customers of any business or the internal employees, if they needed to get access to whatever resources they were, whether that be a website or whether that be files and documents that were stored within the data center. Yeah. They would have to go. Over the moat, so to speak. They would have to be given access, and all those resources that were ever needed were all controlled centrally within that data center, with the security team wrapping their arms around it, and so without having to worry about access being elsewhere. Whereas now, with the advent of cloud, what we are finding is that no longer are those services being consumed within your own data center. Your resources, whether they be your apps, your websites, whether they be documents, are now residing in other people's castles, right? Or within these cloud data centers that are controlled by other people. And so there comes this shared responsibility model, which is okay, well, depending on where in the spectrum you sit, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service, There are aspects of that on different scales, of which you, as the organization consuming the cloud services, are responsible for some of the security, and the cloud service provider is responsible for other parts of the security. The one place where it all kind of meets, or where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, is an identity. So, kind of thinking about the analogy that you gave, this may not be perfect, but I think it works well, is the identity is the key that you have to go to each one of these different castles to unlock and to gain access to the resources that you want. And so identity is the new perimeter. The final thing I'll add on that is that of late, a lot of the attackers are focusing on identity, because once they get access to an identity, that can give them access to other resources, be they cloud resources or multiple cloud resources within multiple clouds, that also include other identities which may have more privileged access, to which they can use to exploit and do all sorts of nefarious action. But you're quite right, identity is the new perimeter.
Yeah, okay, I got it. Yeah, I understand. That's great. So now, obviously, you work with lots of customers, be it, you know, whether it was when you were working with the AWS team or the Azure team, or now with Emetic. In your view, what are the sort of challenges that organisations face when it comes to, specifically to cloud security?
There are a number of challenges which I see a number of organizations, or the majority of organizations that I talk to have, depending on the state of cloud maturity that they exist at. So I will talk about three particular areas or categories of areas which I like to think about these problems in. Number one being tools, two being people, and three being culture.
Right.
And when I talk about tools, so tools, there's a lot I can talk about tools, but tools, number one, you've got traditional tools that exist within the data center. Some organizations want to use them for the cloud, but for the most part,
they're not cloud native, are they? So I guess that
they are
doesn't
not
work,
cloud native. The way you are absolutely right. The way that some of these cloud services are consumed, used, how they show up, are very different to what it's like on-prem. And so not having the right tools to monitor. Also, the complexity of tools within the cloud. There has been a proliferation of a lot of tools. And so because there's various aspects of different types of resources and how they need to be managed and viewed, etc., etc.
I mean, we had a lot of tools before cloud, didn't we? But I think it's almost compounded it.
Absolutely. I mean, we still have a lot of tools in the traditional data center. Just to throw it into throw cloud into the mix as well, it then turns it into even more of a big challenge. But there's so many tools. Compounded with the fact that for large enterprises especially, who are pursuing a multi-cloud strategy, they find it quite difficult to then grasp their hands around it, because you've got open source tools, you've got in-house developed tools, and then because for the most part, a lot of internal teams have to develop the capability, because some of those tools don't exist, or it's been like that for a while. And then of course there's the tools that the cloud service providers provide themselves. And the cloud service providers do a great job. However, some people say that they're not as granular as they should be.
And also, aren't they specific to the platform?
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you're on AWS, they've got some great security tools, but you can't grab those and use them in Azure or on GCP and vice versa. There have been some changes within that, but for the most part, the tools generally tend to be a lot more powerful on the native platforms which have developed them.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense.
And then, of course, moving from tools, going on to people, massive challenge. And we were talking about the fact that just looking at cybersecurity itself, for a while, and I'm not sure if it's still the case, but there was a 0% unemployment rate for cyber.
Yeah, and I think that was the case actually before cloud was really a big thing as well. That's been the case for a while, isn't it?
Absolutely. And then added on to that with a lot of these digital transformation projects, which have happened since COVID, and there has been a huge demand in cloud skills because, of course, as they say, the engine of digital transformation is cloud.
Yeah.
And so trying to find people who then have cloud skills and security skills and are able to marry them together, that's quite it's a challenge that a lot of organizations are going through.
Yeah, I would guess one of the problems is that the traditional security guys that grew up with the old way of doing infrastructure don't have the cloud skills. So although they might seem like the obvious fit to be looking after the cloud security, they're not necessarily. You need different skills, I think.
Absolutely. And interestingly enough, whether you're a developer, whether you are in operations or security, it's a journey to the cloud for everyone.
Yeah.
And that's where the challenge is. The challenge is the security team generally are the ones who get lumped with, okay, we've already built out this capability, we've already got this product that's running, because of course, due to digital transformation and wanting to either stay ahead of the competition or leapfrog the competition, budgets are normally quite open for product teams to go out and build services, and then security has to come and secure them after. So that can be a bit of a challenge, and that bleeds into the culture side, which we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Where, the whole agile culture, absolutely fantastic, brilliant as organizations have them, but for the most part, there's a challenge in integrating the security team into that whole process itself.
Right, okay, that's the culture piece. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Okay, great. So a couple of points you made there, I'd like to sort of delve a little bit deeper into. You covered tools first, and it's sort of my observation, sort of looking at all the reports from the likes of Gartner, that there's a sea soup of technologies. You have the CSPM, the CIEM, the CWPP, the CASB, CNAP, and I think it can be a bit confusing for people to know where to start sometimes with cloud security. So maybe we can talk a little bit about differentiating between the products in the C soup, as I call it, and also maybe as well to sort of think from a point of view of the customer who has a limited budget, hasn't really tackled cloud security yet. Where do you start? If you have budget to buy one product, what would that product be? What's a good starting point for cloud security?
Yeah. I absolutely love that question because you're right. There is a sea soup of acronyms which exist. Funny enough, there's one which you left out, which is CDR, and that's Cloud Detection and Response. Absolutely. And even within that mix, you also start to look at infrastructure as code and Kubernetes. So there's KSPM, but there's a lot of different acronyms which sit within the space. What I would say for an organization with a limited budget, and let's be quite frank, given the economic times that we are at the moment, everybody is challenged with having limited budget. So this advice goes to all.
Yeah.
But start by looking at a cloud native application protection platform as a tool which will help you look at and get a view of what your cloud security posture is at the moment.
Yeah.
What that does is it amalgamates all of those different C acronyms and is able to give you context around the different findings. So again, it's able to correlate that information, be able to give you a really good view around how the findings from these different C-level acronyms relate to each other. Because of course, a cloud resource does not just sit in isolation.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, there are many configurations. I think we were talking about it before, where you may have an EC2 instance, for example, that is open to the public and accessible from the entire internet. That may have some vulnerability So, we're already moving into another C. And then, of course, it may have a privileged identity that is associated with it. Those three combinations together would put it into a high risk space. And then, of course, if it has got access to sensitive resources, or if it's able to then enable you to go and not wanting to delve into it too much, to escalate your privileges, to do even more serious damage within the environment, that becomes a critical sort of finding. So, like I said, that EC2 instance doesn't sit in isolation with its base config, right? There's a lot of things that go around it. And so what these tools do is they give really good context.
Yeah.
They do the right correlation, and then they give you the remediation steps of what you need to do to go off and remediate that problem.
Okay, got it. Yeah. So you got this CSPM is sort of building an inventory of all of your infrastructure, applying some sort of compliance rules and things, checking for config errors. You've got CIEM looking at identities and privileges in a lot of detail, and you've got CWPP looking at workloads, what's happening on my applications, and then. But they're all separate solutions. So what CNAP does is bring all those together so that you can correlate across problems, with something from a point of view of identity or workload or the entity itself, sort of thing.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Correct. And I think what not wanting to overcook the egg, but I think what it does is it gives you that single pane of glass, which gives you really good visibility of where you stand from a security posture across your entire cloud.
Single glass of pain is what I talk about.
Single pane of glass or single glass of pain.
Yeah. They both work. Brilliant. And then the other point I wanted to come back to was people, because. Yes. It occurs to me that if you're a new company, a startup, you're going to start in the cloud, almost certainly a bit of SaaS, bit of cloud infrastructure, and so new company, you're going to employ people with cloud skills. Those are probably the people you're going to talk to about cloud security.
Yes.
What about the more traditional companies? There's obviously a lot more of them. They've got data centers. And they may well have a SOC team, looking after all of their traditional infrastructure. They've now gone and got some cloud infrastructure. They've probably got some cloud guys doing DevOps on that cloud environment. Who do you talk to about cloud security? Does it end up being these guys, the SOC guys that look after security for everything else, or is it the cloud guys, that with these newer sort of skills, but they're really DevOps, they're not really security guys kind of thing? Where does security sit in those organizations?
So interestingly enough, we commissioned a report with Osterman, and we found that 84% of organizations do not have a cloud security team or a cloud security lead. And so what we find is it tends to be split between all of the above.
Right.
And that's really, really interesting, because the challenge that the CISO has is they want to have an overview of where they stand from a security posture perspective and be able to see if they are making improvements within the cloud security posture of the organization itself over time, which the traditional tools within the data center don't actually provide. You've got the dev teams or the DevOps teams who are building out capabilities, whether those be features or new applications or whatever value it is that they're giving to customers. They want to make sure that they are protecting their customers' data and making sure that they are not only providing a quality service but also a secure service. And then, of course, you've got the security team who want to make sure that the dev teams are staying within the given guardrails of what they have put in as policies that cover cloud governance. And so, what I would say is all of the teams actually do need CNAP, because what it becomes is that single tool that is empowering from a tools perspective. So no longer having multiple tools, you've got one tool which everybody refers to, which actually helps to foster the culture as well right?
Yeah.
Because within that tool,
They can communicate, they can have a
communicate.
conversation through the tool kind of thing. Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Plus, it gives, same context, people can be looking at the same things, etc., etc. So, super, super powerful. I would recommend that all teams be looking at what CNAP can do for them.
Okay, that makes absolute sense. Okay, so that was pretty quick, but we wanted to keep these videos short, and we wanted this first one just to be very high level.
Yes.
You work for Emetic at the moment, and I know that Emetic has an identity-first approach to cloud security, whereas other products take a workload protection approach sort of thing first. So I'd like our next video to be about the importance of identity, why Emetic chose identity first, for example. I tend to agree that it was the right approach, having looked at both. But I think it's important to explain that, the importance of identity, how difficult it is to get right, and why Emetic went with identity first approach. Until then, that'll be our next video. Until then, thank you very much for your time, Taffy. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to our next video.
Thank you so much, Ian. Looking forward to it. And once you got me started, I cannot keep quiet about identities and entitlements in the cloud.
Fantastic.
So I am absolutely looking forward to that.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.